So in my recent unboxing and first impressions video on the OnePlus 8 Pro, I spoke at length about how similar it seems compared to Samsung's newest S20 lineup. And I think one of the areas where this is best reflected is the camera setup. The cameras on the OnePlus 8 Pro have seen a fairly significant upgrade this year, and in a lot of reviews, they've been compared quite favorably to the cameras on the S20 lineup of phones. And a lot of reviewers have mentioned that the image processing has resulted in images and videos that feel quite similar to the images and videos taken on the S20 lineup. Well, it's one thing to say they look similar, but it's another altogether to actually put these cameras up against each other and directly compare them side by side. And so that's exactly what we're gonna do. So let's hop over to the computer and put these cameras head to head. Okay, so here we go. I've spent a good portion of today taking lots of side-by-side photos and videos with both the Galaxy S20 Plus and the OnePlus 8 Pro. And one thing I wanted to clear up straight out of the gate is that I've switched off any sort of scene optimizer or beauty modes on both of these phones, as that was something that a lot of you mentioned in my recent camera comparison video can often have a negative impact on image quality. So those sorts of features have been switched off on both phones, and also both phones have been updated to their latest software patches available. Now, if you've seen any of my other camera comparison videos, then you'll know that I love to start these comparisons off by comparing portrait photos of a person. And this is particularly interesting in today's video because I feel as though this is one of the weakest areas of both of these phones. So let's take a look. So the first thing that you'll probably notice here is that the image taken with the portrait mode on the OnePlus 8 Pro is a little bit more cropped in compared to what we have with the image taken on the Galaxy S20 Plus. My personal preference is for these images to crop in a little bit because that resembles portrait photos that we take with real DSLR and mirrorless cameras. So I prefer that look. It's not for everyone. But then in terms of edge detection, you'll notice that both phones are doing a pretty decent job. Both of these phones do tend to have quite a harsh fall off into the background areas of the image. The subject really does pop. It's not supernatural looking. I will say though, in this scenario, the Galaxy S20 Plus has slightly missed the edge when it comes to just above my right ear. You can see something funny is happening there, whereas it's pretty much a flawless cutout when we're looking at the image taken on the OnePlus 8 Pro. Now, because the image is slightly cropped in on the OnePlus 8 Pro, we can't really use these images to compare dynamic range, but if I'm comparing the colors and the overall processing of both of these portrait photos, my personal favorite is the image taken on the OnePlus 8 Pro. So here's another set of portrait photos, and you can see for this scenario, both phones have struggled with edge detection on the top of my head there in particular. It is less obvious with the image taken on the OnePlus 8 Pro and slightly smaller in terms of how big that error is. But that said, in terms of color and dynamic range, both phones have done a pretty decent job, although I will say that the image taken on the OnePlus 8 Pro is slightly punchier compared to the one taken on the Galaxy S20 Plus. Now, normally I do prefer that punchier look, similar to what we see out of the images taken on the Pixel 4 lineup. But that said, I think in this scenario, the image taken on the Galaxy S20 Plus has an overall cleaner look to it, despite that slight error in the edge detection being a little bit worse on the Galaxy S20 Plus. But I think for this particular example, my personal preference is the image taken on the Galaxy S20 Plus. Okay, moving on to a range of images taken in varying daylight conditions. And if we take a look at this first side-by-side comparison, you'll probably recognize this from my recent camera comparison video. And you can see that both phones are doing a very similar job. Those darker areas of the image in the foreground, so the fence there and the trees on the left and the right, they both look pretty similar with both of these images. There is a slight difference in the way that each smartphone has handled the processing or the colors of the building in the background there in the middle of the image. It's a bit lighter on the S20 Plus, whereas a little bit punchier on the OnePlus 8 Pro. And hopefully, despite YouTube compression, you can tell that the sky on the Galaxy S20 Plus is more blown out compared to what we can see with the sky on the OnePlus 8 Pro. So even though the colors are fairly similar across both photos, they are slightly punchier on the OnePlus 8 Pro's image. And also the darker areas in the image taken on the OnePlus 8 Pro are a lot sharper and cleaner compared to the slightly noisy and soft darker areas of the image taken on the Galaxy S20 Plus. So even though from a distance, both of these images look very similar, when we're pixel peeping and taking a look at each different area of these images, my favorite is hands down the one taken on the OnePlus 8 Pro. So then if we zoom out and go to the wide angle lenses on both of these phones, you can see it's a pretty similar story. Slightly brighter on the Galaxy S20 Plus, but no detail at all in that sky. Whereas on the OnePlus 8 Pro, it's not quite as bright, but we're still seeing a little bit of detail in the clouds just above the building there. You can see that slight blue tint, which is the clouds coming through. Whereas on the Galaxy S20 Plus's image, it's just complete white. Aside from that, pretty similar processing for both images, similar to what we saw out of the main sensors on these phones. The image is slightly wider on the Galaxy S20 Plus, so that's something to keep in mind. But again, just comparing these images side by side, I do prefer the overall look and quality of the image taken on the wide angle lens on the OnePlus 8 Pro. And then if we punch into the telephoto lenses on both of these phones, you can see that the image taken on the OnePlus 8 Pro is more saturated compared to the one taken on the Galaxy S20 Plus. But the image taken on the Galaxy S20 Plus is still suffering from some of that purple fringing that we saw in the last camera comparison. And you'll notice that particularly around the little details of the leaves and twigs on the right side of the image. But both phones are doing very well with dynamic range here. Again, slightly more saturated with the image taken on the OnePlus 8 Pro, which I don't like as much. I think I prefer the overall color of the one taken on the Galaxy S20 Plus. But it's that fringing that we can see on the image taken on the Galaxy S20 Plus that I really don't like. So compared to the OnePlus 8 Pro, it's not quite as good in my opinion. Switching to another daylight scenario, and again, just another reminder that the scene optimizer setting was switched off on both of these phones, and you can see that the image taken on the OnePlus 8 Pro is a little bit more contrasty compared to the one taken on the Galaxy S20 Plus. Both phones do have very similar image processing, and this is a really good example of that. The colors, the sharpness is pretty much the same between both phones here. I will say that the image taken on the OnePlus 8 Pro is a little more contrasty compared to the one taken on the Galaxy S20 Plus. That is really evident in the darker areas of that tree in the middle there. You can see on the image taken on the OnePlus 8 Pro, we're losing a lot of detail in the darker areas of that tree trunk in the middle there. Whereas on the Galaxy S20 Plus, we can see pretty much the entire tree trunk all the way from top down to the bottom. That said, if you look at the clouds in the image taken on the Galaxy S20 Plus, they are slightly more blown out compared to the clouds on the image taken on the OnePlus 8 Pro. So it looks like that's a little bit of a trade-off there. But I think the overall look of the image taken on the Galaxy S20 Plus is my personal preference in this particular example. There's a little bit more punch and vibrancy to the leaves that you can pick up on there. And again, I prefer seeing a little more detail in those darker areas of my images. Similar story when we switch over to the wide angle lenses on both of these phones, a little more contrasty with the image taken on the OnePlus 8 Pro and less detail in the darker areas of the image there, but again, more detail in the brighter areas of the image. But I will say the image taken with the wide angle lens on the OnePlus 8 Pro looks a little sharper, a little more vibrant, a bit more pleasing to the eye straight out of the gate. So that's why it's my favorite out of these two. And then again, to the telephoto lenses on both of these phones, personally, I prefer the image taken on the OnePlus 8 Pro because it doesn't suffer from that fringing issue that we can see again here with the image taken on the Galaxy S20 Plus. But it's a bit of a toss-up in terms of image processing and color. They both look pretty similar, nice and punchy, nice and vibrant. But again, because of that lack of fringing issue with the image taken on the OnePlus 8 Pro, it tends to be my favorite in this side-by-side comparison. Now here's another daylight side by side. This is an architecture scenario and both phones are doing a really decent job. I'd be happy with either of these images. That said, I think I prefer the image taken on the OnePlus 8 Pro because of the way that the colors have been rendered. It actually has a pixel look to it with this particular image where it's slightly cooler in its color tone, whereas the image taken on the Galaxy S20 Plus is slightly warmer. And also the image taken on the OnePlus 8 Pro is very sharp and it has that nice punchy look to it, which I really like when it comes to architecture photography. And it's even harder to pick a winner with the images taken on the wide angle lenses. Both are doing a pretty decent job in terms of sharpness and dynamic range, although I will say the OnePlus 8 Pro has done a better job in terms of retaining the detail in those clouds that you can see at the top there. So I think for that reason, the winner is the OnePlus 8 Pro, but again, I'd be pretty happy with either of these images. Now here's another scenario where I think we can see very pixel-like processing with the image taken on the OnePlus 8 Pro. Lots of good punch and clarity, particularly when compare it to the slightly flatter image that we're getting out of the Galaxy S20 Plus. You could probably take the image taken on the Galaxy S20 Plus and boost the clarity and sharpness in post to get it to look a little more similar to the one taken on the OnePlus 8 Pro. So again, not everyone's going to like that really edited look that we can see with the image taken on the OnePlus 8 Pro, but for mine, that's my personal favorite out of this side-by-side comparison. Again, a similar story with the images taken on the wide-angle lenses on both of these phones, a little flatter, not as punchy with the image taken on the Galaxy S20 Plus, whereas we do have that punch and clarity with the image taken on the wide-angle lens on the OnePlus 8 Pro. Again, looking at the side-by-side of the telephoto lenses here, we can still see that fringing with the image taken on the Galaxy S20 Plus, and I do prefer the punchier, more crisp-looking image taken on the OnePlus 8 Pro. So in that particular scenario, it was a little bit more of a blowout where I preferred every single image taken on the OnePlus 8 Pro, regardless of which lens I was using. Now here's an ultra close-up photo taken with the main sensors on the Galaxy S20 Plus and OnePlus 8 Pro. Both images look pretty decent, but again, I prefer that punchier, crisper looking image taken on the OnePlus 8 Pro. And even though it is a punchier photo, which often tends to result in worse dynamic range, you can see that we can still see some of those clouds off in the distance there with the image taken on the OnePlus 8 Pro compared to the image taken on the Galaxy S20 Plus, where those clouds and that sky is completely blown out. So a pretty interesting side-by-side comparison there with the images taken in good, bright lighting conditions. And again, I would say overall, my favorite were the images taken on the OnePlus 8 Pro. I tended to prefer the image processing slightly more with more clarity, more punch, compared to the slightly flatter, less saturated photos that we saw on the Galaxy S20 Plus. And the OnePlus 8 Pro handled dynamic range a little bit better than what we saw with the images taken on the Galaxy S20 Plus. But with that out of the way, let's now jump into another really interesting comparison: low light photos. You'll hopefully be able to pick up on a recurring pattern here where the images taken on the Galaxy S20 Plus, they are slightly brighter compared to the ones taken on the OnePlus 8 Pro, only a little bit, but that said, the images taken on the OnePlus 8 Pro are definitely cleaner. Now, YouTube compression will probably not allow you to see this, but the darker areas of the images taken on the Galaxy S20 Plus are a lot noisier, whereas the darker areas of the images taken on the OnePlus 8 Pro and using its nightscape feature are very, very clean and sharp at the same time. And so whilst you might look at these photos taken on the phones on those smaller screens and think that the images taken in low light conditions on the Galaxy S20 Plus are better because they're brighter, I would say that the images taken using the OnePlus 8 Pro's nightscape feature are cleaner and better quality overall. There are some photos in low light conditions where the OnePlus 8 Pro will miss, but generally speaking, they're very clean and very impressive. And even though the photos taken using the Galaxy S20 Plus's night mode feature are still very impressive, they do suffer from mushiness in the darker areas of the images, whereas on the OnePlus 8 Pro, they're very clean and very sharp. Again, both phones can take some really impressive images in low light conditions, but again, the winner here is the OnePlus 8 Pro for delivering consistently clean and sharp images taken in pretty poor lighting conditions. But with that now out of the way, let's now jump into some selfie portrait comparisons. Now you'll see that when we start using the selfie cameras, both cameras struggle a little more with dynamic range. Though I will say that my skin is a little more blown out with the image taken on the OnePlus 8 Pro compared to the really soft and consistent skin tones we're seeing with the image taken on the Galaxy S20 Plus. Both phones have done a really impressive job here with edge detection. You can see there's pretty much no errors that I can pick up on, at least nothing that you're going to notice on a phone screen. So that's really impressive. Now, whilst I do tend to prefer the punchier looking photo taken on the OnePlus 8 Pro, I think the fact that the Galaxy S20 Plus has retained a consistent look across my skin tones means it is going to slightly edge out the OnePlus 8 Pro in this side-by-side comparison. Another quick side-by-side here, and the OnePlus 8 Pro has struggled a little more with edge detection. You can see at the top left of my hat there, it's blended in with the background of the building there, but I don't really like the softer looking image that we're seeing out of the S20 Plus here. So if the OnePlus 8 Pro had have nailed the edge detection like it did in the previous photo, then it would have hands down won this side-by-side comparison, but it's a little too hard to pick a win here because I don't really like the way that the image has been processed on the Galaxy S20 Plus, but the OnePlus 8 Pro has struggled with edge detection. So a little bit more of a toss-up between the selfie cameras on the OnePlus 8 Pro and the S20 Plus. Similar story in terms of image processing, but edge detection is a little bit hit and miss depending on which phone you're using and the scenario that you're in. It's a little bit luck of the draw sometimes with portrait mode, particularly using the selfie cameras. But now let's jump over to another selfie comparison, but this time a video test. All right, starting off with the selfie camera on the S20 Plus. And obviously with these tests, we always want to be looking out for image quality. How does it compare? But I'm also really interested to hear the sound quality. What are the microphones like when we're using the selfie camera? And also what's stabilization like as well? So let's jump over now to the OnePlus 8 Pro. All right, switching over to the selfie camera on the OnePlus 8 Pro. And again, I wonder whether or not the image quality is on par or better perhaps than the S20 Plus. Stabilization, how does that look? And then audio quality, how does this sound compared to what we just heard with the S20 Plus? Now this is a scenario where I think both phones are doing a really decent job, but in my opinion, the winner is hands down the Galaxy S20 Plus. The way that it handles dynamic range is so impressive. It's a really consistent image, and the audio quality is really impressive as well. That's not to say that it's bad image quality or bad audio quality out of the OnePlus 8 Pro. It's not, but it's just that the Galaxy S20 Plus does such a good job of it. But now let's switch the camera around and do a rear video camera test. All right, now another video camera test, but this time with the main sensor on the rear of the S20 Plus. This is where you'd hope to get the best image quality, not so much necessarily audio quality, depending on the mic placement on the phone, but again, image quality should surpass what we saw on the selfie camera. I'm interested to hear your thoughts on that. Does it surpass the quality that we saw on the selfie camera? So let's now jump over to the OnePlus 8 Pro and see how it stacks up to the main sensor on the S20 Plus. All right, now onto the rear camera, the main sensor on the back of the OnePlus 8 Pro. How does this compare to what we just saw on the S20 Plus? Does the image quality look any worse or any better? How's the image stabilization look? How does the audio quality sound in comparison? Let me know your thoughts down in the comments below. Again, another comparison where the crown clearly goes to the Galaxy S20 Plus. A very consistent and visually pleasing image, and also the audio is super clean as well, and it doesn't have those focusing issues like what we're seeing with the video taken on the OnePlus 8 Pro. I do like the audio that's been captured with this video on the OnePlus 8 Pro. It's nice and loud and punchy, but it's not as clean as the audio captured on the Galaxy S20 Plus. I would actually compare the video quality from the OnePlus 8 Pro to what we've seen in the past on the Pixel 4 lineup. And so that's a pretty good thing. But again, the Galaxy S20 Plus takes the cake here. But now let's zoom out and compare the wide angle lenses for video. All right, now switching over to the wide angle lens on the back of the S20 Plus. I always really like doing these tests because I think this is a much more realistic and useful option to film yourself with the wide angle lens compared to using the main sensor, because with the main sensor, you're much more likely to accidentally cut yourself off because it's quite a bit zoomed in compared to the wide angle lens. But again, it's a really helpful scenario to see how the image quality looks using the wide angle lens compared to the main sensor. How does the audio quality sound, and also general image stabilization as well. And now over to the wide angle lens on the back of the OnePlus 8 Pro. We've got the sun going in and out of clouds at the moment, so keep that in mind. But with wide angle lenses on OnePlus devices in the past, they've been fun to have, but they've taken a little bit of a hit to the image quality. And so this year we've seen an upgrade to the sensor being used for the wide angle lens. So hopefully image quality doesn't take as big of a hit as we've seen in past OnePlus devices. How does it compare though to what we just saw on the S20 Plus? And also, what's autofocus like on these phones? Because I can't see myself, so I can't tap to focus because I'm not looking at the screen. So hopefully that's going okay. And also, what does audio quality sound like? How does it sound compared to what we just heard on the S20 Plus? Now for this comparison, it's a lot harder to pick a winner from because both phones have their pros and cons. I think I'm going to give the slight edge to the OnePlus 8 Pro in terms of audio quality, simply because it's louder and it's punchier. Only just compared to the S20 Plus, but again, that gives it the slight edge. But then in terms of image quality, both phones are handling the situation very differently. Yes, it's over sharpened almost to a fault with the video taken on the OnePlus 8 Pro, but then in comparison, the image on the Galaxy S20 Plus almost looks out of focus. It's that soft. So I think because of that reason, I'm going to give the crown in this comparison to the OnePlus 8 Pro. Okay, so that is the full comparison of these two phones. And whilst each phone does have a couple of additional features that I didn't touch on in today's video, like the OnePlus's macro and photochrome features, or the Galaxy's ability to shoot 8K video, these are not really features that are going to impact whether or not I decide to buy a phone. They're fun to have, but they're fairly gimmicky, and so I wasn't really interested in including them in today's video. But our suspicions of the OnePlus 8 Pro's new camera lineup competing fairly competitively with the S20's lineup of cameras has proven to be pretty bang on. In fact, I would say, for the most part, the images taken on the OnePlus 8 Pro were consistently better looking, if only slightly, than the images taken on the Galaxy S20 Plus, and that was across each of the different lenses. Video is a different story. The S20 Plus was clearly the overall winner in that category, but the OnePlus 8 Pro is certainly no slouch in regards to video either. And so what this shows is that image quality is no longer a reason not to buy a OnePlus device, or at least the OnePlus 8 Pro. We now have flagship level cameras on a OnePlus device, which is pretty fantastic. I wouldn't go as far as to say that they're better than or even as good as the cameras on the iPhone and Pixel devices, and in my opinion, they're not, and I do find myself missing the consistently excellent images that I've become accustomed to taking on my Pixel 4 phone. But again, now we can say that the cameras on the OnePlus 8 Pro are just about as good, and in some cases even better than what we have with the Galaxy lineup of phones. But those are just my thoughts. Let me know if you agree or disagree with me down in the comments below. And the full in-depth review of the OnePlus 8 Pro is on the way. So make sure you hit that subscribe button and that little notification bell so that you're notified when that video goes live. But aside from that, that is it. Hopefully you enjoyed the video. Thank you all very much for watching, and I will catch you later.